Robert and Susan Downey drive their car along a winding mountain road as the sun begins to set behind the tall pine trees. The famous Hollywood couple has escaped the bustling city life for what they thought would be a simple weekend task: clearing out Robert's late Uncle Frank's cabin before it sold. Uncle Frank had passed away just a month ago, leaving behind a property that had been in the family for generations, but hadn't been visited by Robert since his childhood. As they pull up to the rustic wooden structure nestled among towering trees, Susan notices how the fading light casts eerie shadows across the weathered facade. "It's exactly how I remember it," Robert says with a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "Uncle Frank was always so secretive about this place. He'd come up here for weeks at a time, especially after he retired." Susan squeezes his hand reassuringly as they step out of the car, the crisp forest air filling their lungs. The cabin looks frozen in time, a relic from another era with its stone chimney and hand-carved wooden details that you couldn't find in modern constructions. As they approach the entrance, Susan's keen eye catches something unusual carved into the wooden doorframe, an intricate symbol resembling an overlapping circle and triangle with strange markings inside. "Robert, have you seen this before?" she asks, running her fingers along the weathered engraving. Robert examines it carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. "No, I've never noticed that. Uncle Frank never mentioned anything like this." The symbol seems deliberately placed, too precise to be random vandalism or natural wear. After settling in and unpacking their belongings, they begin exploring the cabin's interior. Dust covers most surfaces and the furniture is arranged exactly as Uncle Frank had left it. A half-read book still marks his place on the side table, and his favorite chair faces the window with the best view of the forest. The silence is profound, broken only by the occasional creaking of the old wooden structure as it settles. Robert finds himself drawn to his uncle's study, where bookshelves line the walls, filled with volumes on history, mythology, and unexpectedly, cryptography. Later that night, as a storm begins to roll in across the mountains, Susan is awakened by a strange, repetitive tapping sound. Following the noise, she finds Robert sitting at the kitchen table, a flashlight propped up beside him, illuminating an old leather-bound journal. The wooden floor around him is partially pulled up, revealing a small hidden compartment. "I couldn't sleep," he explains, excitement evident in his voice despite the late hour. "I remembered Uncle Frank always sat in this spot, and the floorboard sounded hollow when I walked over it." Susan wraps her cardigan tighter around herself against the night chill and peers over Robert's shoulder at the journal. The pages are filled with Uncle Frank's distinctive handwriting, notes, drawings, and what appear to be codes. "Listen to this," Robert says, reading aloud. "The treasure is hidden where light meets shadow on the fifth day. Only those who understand the symbols will find what was lost to time, but preserved in memory." He turns the page to reveal a hand-drawn map of the surrounding forest area, meticulously detailed, with the same strange symbol from the doorframe marked at different locations. Small notations in what appears to be some kind of personal shorthand are scribbled alongside each marking. "Your uncle was hiding something out there in the woods?" Susan asks, her interest piqued despite her initial skepticism. Robert nods slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. "Frank was always telling me stories about our family history when I was a kid, tales that seemed like folklore or fairy tales. I never knew how much of it was real." They spend the rest of the night poring over the journal, trying to decipher Frank's cryptic notes, the storm outside intensifying as if responding to their discovery. The next morning dawns clear and bright, as if the night storm had washed the world clean. Armed with Uncle Frank's journal and map, Robert and Susan set out into the forest. The path is overgrown in places, suggesting it had been some time since anyone had ventured this way. Robert navigates using his uncle's map, which proves surprisingly accurate despite its hand-drawn nature. The symbols lead them to various landmarks scattered throughout the woods. First to an old stone well, its mouth partially covered with moss and vines, then to a magnificent lightning-struck oak tree that still stands proud despite its scarred trunk, and finally to a small but beautiful waterfall cascading over rocks into a crystal-clear pool below. At each location, they find the symbol subtly carved into a nearby surface. On the stone rim of the well, in the bark of the damaged tree, and on a flat rock beside the waterfall. These must have been important places to Uncle Frank, Robert muses as they rest by the waterfall, the sound of rushing water creating a peaceful backdrop to their adventure. Susan examines the symbols more closely, noting slight variations in each one. Robert, I think these symbols are a code of some kind. Look, well, each one is slightly different, like they're telling a story or giving directions. As they compare the symbols to those in the journal, Robert suddenly remembers the cryptic line about light meeting shadow on the fifth day. Susan checks her phone's calendar. Today is the 5th of the month. Do you think that's what it means? They look around the waterfall area with renewed interest, trying to understand how light and shadow might reveal something hidden. Hours pass as they observe the movement of the sun across the sky, its light filtering through the forest canopy and creating ever-changing patterns on the ground and rocks. Just as the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Susan notices something remarkable. A beam of sunlight reflects off the surface of the waterfall at a specific angle, creating a dazzling flash that illuminates a section of the rock face beside it. For just a few moments, the light reveals what appears to be a narrow opening in the cliff, a crevice that would be nearly invisible at any other time. "Robert, look!" she exclaims, pointing excitedly. They rush to the spot, finding a narrow passage that leads into a small chamber carved into the rock face, hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines and moss that had grown over the entrance over the years. Heart pounding with anticipation, Robert leads the way into the chamber, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate the space. The air inside is cool and surprisingly fresh, suggesting some natural ventilation system. The chamber appears to be man-made, its walls smooth in places, with more of the mysterious symbols etched into the stone. At the center sits an old wooden chest, its metal fittings tarnished with age but still intact. The chest isn't locked, but years of moisture have caused the wood to swell, making it difficult to open. With Susan's help, Robert manages to pry the lid open, the ancient hinges creaking in protest. Both hold their breath, half expecting to find gold coins or precious gems, the traditional treasure of stories and legends. Instead, they discover something far more personal. The chest contains hundreds of old photographs, yellowed letters tied with faded ribbon, military medals, newspaper clippings in various languages, and a sealed envelope with Robert's name written on it in Uncle Frank's distinctive handwriting. With trembling hands, Robert opens the envelope and unfolds the letter inside. As he reads aloud, his voice becomes emotional. "My dear nephew, if you're reading this, then you've successfully followed my breadcrumb trail and solved my little mystery. I always knew you had the curiosity and intelligence to do so. What you found isn't gold or jewels, but something I believe to be far more valuable, the truth about our family's history. These photographs and documents tell the story of your grandfather, my brother, who during the darkest days of World War II risked everything to help save an entire village in southern France from certain destruction. His actions were never officially recognized due to the classified nature of his work, and he swore all involved to secrecy to protect the identities of his local collaborators." Robert pauses, overwhelmed by this revelation about his grandfather, whom he had only known as a quiet, unassuming man who rarely spoke of his war experiences. The letter continues. "I've spent decades collecting these records, tracking down survivors and their descendants, piecing together the full story of his heroism. I kept these treasures safe all these years, waiting for the right time and the right person to share them with. Now their story can finally be told. And who better to tell it than you, who has found your own place in the spotlight? Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't gold or jewels, but the truth about where we come from and the legacy we inherit. With love and faith in you, Uncle Frank." One letter in particular catches Susan's attention. A recent one from a woman in her 80s living in southern France, who describes how the entire village still commemorates their rescue every year, and how they had tried repeatedly to locate any living relatives of the American officer who had saved them. "Robert," Susan says, eyes shining with excitement and emotion, "these people have been trying to thank your family for generations. They've kept this story alive all this time." Robert nods, deeply moved by the connection to a past he never knew existed. All my life I've played heroes on screen, he says thoughtfully, never knowing I had a real hero in my family. Susan takes his hand, her producer's mind already working. We should share this story with the world, she suggests, not just for your grandfather's recognition, but for all these people who've kept his memory alive. Team Downey's next project, a documentary about real heroism and how the echoes of one person's courage can resonate through generations. Robert smiles at his wife, grateful for her vision and support. From a mysterious treasure hunt to an amazing discovery that connects past and present, he says, Uncle Frank knew exactly what he was doing when he set up this elaborate puzzle. He knew I wouldn't be able to resist an adventure, and he knew this story needed to be told. They begin planning their next steps, contacting the village in France, arranging interviews with any surviving witnesses or their descendants, and researching the historical context of his grandfather's secret mission. As the night deepens around the cabin, Robert steps outside onto the porch, looking up at the stars that shine with remarkable clarity away from the city lights. He thinks about the legacy that has been entrusted to him. Not fame or fortune, but a story of quiet heroism and lives saved through courage and sacrifice. Inside, Susan continues organizing the materials, already thinking like a documentarian about how to structure this remarkable narrative. The cabin, which had seemed merely a relic of the past when they arrived, now pulses with purpose and possibility, a bridge between generations and a launching point for a new creative journey together. Robert returns inside, his mind made up. First thing tomorrow, I'm calling our team, he tells Susan, and then I think we should book flights to France. There's a village we need to visit. Susan nods, understanding the importance of this journey, not just for the potential film, but for Robert's connection to his own history. As they continue working into the night, the cabin glows with light and renewed purpose amidst the dark forest, a beacon of storytelling and memory in the wilderness. Their treasure hunt had led not to gold, but to something far more valuable: truth, connection, and a legacy waiting to be honored.